So this is a 2004 Yamaha XT225, and today is its maiden voyage. It's the maiden voyage because this is the first time I've ridden this bike since it's been recovered by the police. I've actually tried to share this story a bunch of times, but I always ended up cutting it out of the videos because it made them too long or it steered away from what I was doing. But regardless, back in February 2016, I bought this thing as a replacement to the NX125 that I owned prior to it. I sold that thing, I made a little money on it. Then I found this. I bought it for my wife because the 125 was way too slow for her. And it was frankly a little too slow for me. I thought it was dangerous. I made a video about it. But this was the replacement for it. And I bought this bike because, frankly, it's a real piece of shit. The guy who sold it to me gave it to me for $1,200. It runs great. But when I bought it, it had two mismatching mirrors, and the engine was completely mucked up with grime. The chain is bad. There's no front sprocket cover, and the tires are worn out. But thought, hey, that's the perfect bike for my wife to drop because she will inevitably drop it a lot. So I think she rode it twice. But the first time she rode it, she dropped it in some sand, and we didn't realize it at the time, but which was right here. It was made of plastic. It cracked, right? So I rode it home without any problems, but then the next time we took it out, which was a week or two later, it just randomly stopped running on her. I was inspecting it and I realized the spark plug cap is in two pieces, so there's your problem. So I pushed it home 2 miles, and that night, for some reason, I decided to leave it unchained. And I don't know if somebody was eyeing it or what the situation was, but it disappeared that night. And this was actually the first motorcycle that I had stolen from me. She did not have full coverage insurance on it, so we didn't get any money for the loss. I just had to eat that $1,200, which kind of sucked, but hey, it was better than eating the cost of my XR650. Well, almost a year goes by, and in December of 2016, she gets a call from her insurance company, and they tell her that the Phoenix police have it in their impound lot. And I thought, that's crazy. Why would they call you and the police wouldn't call me? So I didn't do anything about it. I just thought if they have it, it's probably wrecked, and I don't want it. So I'll see if the police actually, because I had already told the police to let it go, because they actually sent me a letter that asking if they wanted me to leave the case open, and I told them to close the case. So I figured they didn't care, but anyway, the police department sent me a letter saying that if I didn't get the motorcycle out, like I was still going to be responsible for the fees. I was like, all right, I better go over there and see if it's worth getting back. So I go over to the impound lot, and this motorcycle was in better condition than it was when I bought it. Like they professionally painted the engine. They replaced the mirrors. They replaced the turn signals. The throttle used to stick, and they fixed that. And then the craziest thing I think is they rekeyed the ignition without actually replacing it. Somehow they made a duplicate key for the existing ignition. Like this bike was in much better shape. I guess they caught somebody trying to register it, and it came up as stolen. But that guy had purchased it from some. So whoever stole this bike did it successfully, and then the guy who bought it from him is the one who had it repoed. I picked it up just before I moved, and it's just kind of been sitting, and I just now bought a battery for it. And this is the first time I've ridden it since February of last year. I mean, this bike is a real turd, man. I mean, the inside of the gas tank has rust in it. This front, whatever you call those, this front handguard is bent. Both levers have been cut off at the ends to fit within the guards instead of like replacing the levers. The thing is like garbage, which is kind of the point. But it's just like it was when I remembered it. Other than that, there's a funny smell when it runs. It actually kind of smells like smoke or something. I have no idea where that's coming from, but it smells awful. And it's always smelled that way. It's pretty fast. It actually goes like, it'll do 75 miles an hour. I did that on the way home from buying it. It's perfect, really. It's a perfect little off-road machine for someone who doesn't want to get in over their head. But there's a couple other quirks to it, one of which is there is no dipstick. There is no dipstick and there is no oil sight window. I have not been able to explain this phenomenon. In fact, the guy that sold me the bike told me he didn't know. I was like, okay man, so did you never change the oil? There was no explanation from him. So when I owned it, I was going to change the oil, and it never happened because I couldn't figure out how to measure the oil. So I guess I'm just going to drain it, fill it back up with what the book says holds. If you understand at all why that might be the case, let me know, because it's driving me crazy. Like, the oil sight window is normally right here, and that's where the internet says it is, but this was solid, and it's not because they painted it, it's because that really is solid metal. You pull this out, there's no dipstick attached to it at all. I genuinely have no idea how to check the oil on this. I gotta say I'm impressed with this person. Whoever they were very good at what they were doing. I mean, rekeying an existing ignition, who can do that? And then they had a real title. Like, they had a real duplicate title that the DMV would have accepted if my bike wasn't in their system as stolen. It's insane. But right now, I mean, this thing needs an oil change. It needs a new chain. I'd like to have a sprocket cover for the front, but it's gonna need some tires. I think it needs a rear brake. I have a whole new drum for the back. The guy gave me the parts, actually. The guy that sold it to me, that is. The legitimate guy. Too good to pass up this opportunity. I gotta be honest, I love this bike. Like, it is genuinely a good little motorcycle. It's so low to the ground and it's so lightweight. It's real easy to handle on tight stuff, going slow. I think the suspension is a bit fucked. Who cares? I think the front has actually collapsed a little bit because you can see the fork gaiters are crushed. Oh, this guy is not somebody I want to get to know. He's down there looking through that junk. I came over here once before on my XR and I found this pile of garbage down there and joked that there was a homeless man living inside of it. Well, I'm gonna get out of here. Going this way. The guy who owned this previously also took the baffles out of the exhaust. However you do that. It's pretty loud, actually. I'm not a big fan of modifying your existing exhaust to make it sound better. I think that always looks and sounds cheap. But for a $1,200 motorcycle, I really can't have an opinion.